A man who dedicated 13 years of his life to taming lions was torn apart in the arena by one of his charges in front of hundreds of spectators. Legendary illusionists, whose name was renowned in Las Vegas, witnessed their magic turn to blood when a 400-pound white tiger clamped down on its owner's neck. When the line between man and predator is erased in a second and the enthusiastic applause turns into chilling screams of horror, the illusion of control over wild nature is incredibly fragile. We visit zoos and circuses expecting to witness a miracle, to feel awe at the power of nature, believing ourselves to be completely safe behind barriers and bars. But what happens when these barriers collapse? When instinct prevails over training and a person turns from an observer into prey? These stories are not the invention of horror movie screenwriters. These are real tragedies that unfolded where the glare of spotlights and the roar of the crowd were supposed to ensure safety. I will immerse you in the most shocking cases where animals attack people right during performances or in zoo enclosures. We will see how experienced trainers, who had built trust with their dangerous charges over the years, became their victims. We will learn about moments when ordinary visitors, seeking thrills or the perfect shot, crossed an invisible line, paying a terrible price for it. This is a story about how a mesmerizing spectacle can turn into a nightmare, a reminder that wildlife, even in captivity, always lives by its own rules, and ignoring them is deadly dangerous. Prepare yourself. The stories you will hear will make your blood run cold and forever change your perspective on the world of wild animals behind bars. His name was synonymous with bravery and skill in Alexandria. Islam Shaheen, a 35-year-old lion tamer, had been stepping into the arena of the popular Lion Village Park for 13 consecutive years, mesmerizing the audience with his fearlessness. He interacted with the most formidable predators on the planet, armed only with a wooden stick and unwavering confidence. His path to fame did not begin under the bright lights of the arena. He grew up in Egypt and initially worked behind the scenes, taking care of the very animals he would later share the stage with. His natural gift for communicating with big cats set him apart, earning the trust of his colleagues and the admiration of visitors. Islam's performances became the heart of Lion Village. The audience, holding their breath, watched as he guided the lions through dangerous tricks. Their roars mingled with the applause of the crowd. He transformed primal power into a captivating performance. But behind the glamour, there was also a dark side. Lion Village, located near Cairo, was not just a tourist attraction, but also a subject of criticism. The park housed not only lions, but also tigers, camels, and other exotic animals, many in cramped enclosures. Animal rights activists pointed out signs of malnutrition and neglect, calling the living conditions inhumane. However, the allure of the show outweighed the concerns. On November 27, 2016, the air of the park buzzed with anticipation. Families, students, and thrill-seekers gathered for the evening show. That evening's program featured 3 lions, including a recent addition, a massive male with a thick dark mane brought from South Africa. This new lion was impressive. Its muscular body radiated wild strength, but behind its golden eyes lay unpredictability. Previously, it had already attacked another trainer, although the incident was hushed up, attributed to an accident. The park management believed that time would tame the beast. No one suspected that on this very evening, the illusion would shatter with a deafening crash. The arena had a life of its own, filled with the roar of the crowd's approval, completely oblivious to the quiet tension building inside the ring. Islam Shaheen, a consummate professional, continued his performance, instructing one of the lions to climb the ladder. But in an instant, in a fraction of a second, everything changed. The new lion, the one with the dark mane and piercing gaze, made its move. Without the slightest warning, it lunged forward, a blurred mass of pure muscular fury. The beast covered the distance between them in an instant. A second ago, Islam was commanding the arena, and the next moment he was on the ground, pinned by the crushing weight of the lion. The night was filled with screams of terror. Parents instinctively clutched their children close. Some people started to run, others were frozen in place. Their minds refused to process the nightmare unfolding before them. Some, overcoming the shock, frantically pulled out their phones, trying to capture the horror with trembling hands. Other trainers immediately rushed into action. Their wooden sticks thudded against the lion's body in a desperate attempt to make it release its grip. But the animal was engulfed in primal fury. Its claws tore through fabric and flesh, powerful jaws clamped down on Islam's neck. Blood spread across the concrete floor of the arena, soaking it crimson. The air, once filled with music and laughter, now rang with heart-wrenching screams of panic. The lion did not retreat. The trainers fought tirelessly, hitting, shouting, using everything to make the beast back down. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the lion loosened its grip. With one last shake of its head, it released Islam and moved to the edge of the ring. Blood dripped from its jaws. Islam lay motionless. The spectacle that once drew crowds to the park had turned into a nightmare that none of those present would ever be able to forget. The trainers rushed to Islam, their hands desperately pressing his wounds, trying to stop the relentless flow of blood. Every second mattered. A bell rang. An ambulance was already racing to the call. His body was quickly lifted and carried out of the ring, leaving a crimson trail behind. The spectators, still in deep shock, watched as the arena gates closed behind him. A few minutes later, Islam arrived at Andalusia Salam Hospital. There, the doctors engaged in a desperate struggle for his life. His injuries were horrifying. A skull fracture, deep lacerations on his face and neck, multiple bone fractures, and severe internal bleeding. Medical machines beeped, nurses rushed through the corridors, and the operating room turned into a battlefield between life and death. For 2 days, the world held its breath, following the news. But despite the titanic efforts of the medical team, the damage proved to be too great. On November 29, 2016, Islam Shahin took his last breath. This news shook society to its core. For over 10 years, he literally played with death, skillfully balancing between the human and the primal. But in the end, the wild took his life. The Lion Village Park was immediately closed. Authorities began an investigation. Some pointed to the increased aggression of the lion due to the mating season. Others claimed that the conditions in the park, cramped cages and constant stress drove the animal to a boiling point. Whatever the reason, one thing was clear. Islam's tragic death reignited the long-smoldering debate about the costs of using wild animals for public entertainment. This death served as a grim reminder of the risks involved in trying to bend nature to human will. The city of Sin has seen many dazzling spectacles, but nothing could compare to the partnership of Siegfried Fischbacher and Roy Horn. For years, their performances represented the pinnacle of illusions, where breathtaking magic intertwined with the primal power of exotic animals. This duo became a living legend, their names shone in neon alongside the greatest stars of global renown. They built their empire on trust in each other, trust in their craft, and most critically, trust in their animals. The jewel of their show was an astonishing white tiger named Manticore, a 400-pound apex predator, raised in captivity and trained to be part of the duo's meticulously choreographed illusions. For over 10 years, Manticore was not just a stage partner for Roy, he was a member of the family. The bond between them seemed unbreakable, woven from daily care and mutual respect. The Mirage Casino Hotel was packed, as it was every evening when Siegfried and Roy took the stage. The audience craved a miracle, and they delivered it. But on one fateful night, October 3, 2003, the magic tragically came to an end. Under the bright glow of the stage lights, Roy stepped into the spotlight with Manticore by his side. The audience, as always, was mesmerized. For years, this act went off without a hitch. Roy handled the majestic tiger with such ease and confidence that made the impossible seem ordinary. But all the magic of Siegfried and Roy was based on the illusion that a human can fully control a wild beast. And that night, in front of thousands of people, this illusion shattered into pieces. The moment that forever changed their story began quite innocently. A simple signal, a raised microphone, a request for Manticore to greet the audience. No one could predict what would follow. The theater buzzed with anticipation. The performance unfolded with polished precision. Every movement was flawless. Every interaction between Roy and Manticore resembled a well-rehearsed dance of man and beast. The audience, mesmerized, caught every gesture, unaware of the disaster lurking just seconds away from them. Then a flash of unpredictability. It is reported that it was an unplanned move. Roy brought the microphone close to Manticore's muzzle, a cue meant to elicit awe from the crowd. But instead of complying, the tiger clamped its powerful jaws on Roy's sleeve. An instant of confusion, a slight deviation from the script to which Roy had undoubtedly prepared countless times. He reacted quickly, tapping the tiger on the nose with the microphone, a subtle signal meant to correct the behavior. Manticore loosened its grip, but a moment of hesitation hung in the air like a warning. Something was wrong, and then in a split second the act spiraled out of control. Manticore lunged. A collective gasp of horror swept through the theater as Roy was knocked off his feet. The master illusionist fell, turning into vulnerable prey. The tiger's massive paws pinned him to the floor. In the ensuing deafening silence, uncertainty gripped the audience. Was this part of the performance, or had the unthinkable just happened? Understanding came quickly. The majestic white tiger, once a symbol of grace and power under Roy's control, had turned against its trainer. The illusion was shattered. Then, with chilling ease, Manticore sank his fangs into Roy's neck and began dragging him across the stage. Blood stained the pristine floor beneath them, creating a ghastly contrast to the glamorous setting just moments before. The air, once filled with laughter and applause, now rang with panicked screams. At that moment, it became clear that the magic had vanished, leaving only the raw primal force that no illusion could contain. The aftermath, the end of an era, and the unsolvable mystery burst forth as the realization of what had happened descended upon the Mirage Theater. What began as yet another mesmerizing evening of magic turned into a desperate struggle for survival. Manticore, the magnificent white tiger that had captivated audiences for years, ceased to be a performer. He became a beast acting on instinct. Backstage, the trained assistants rushed into action. It wasn't the first time they had to deal with unpredictable moments during a show, but this was different. It was a matter of life and death. Streams from fire extinguishers were directed at Manticore, a desperate attempt to scare him, to make him release his grip. The trainers shouted, their voices tense, but the tiger remained unperturbed. With each passing second, the danger intensified. And then Siegfried appeared. Seeing his lifelong partner motionless in the grip of their beloved tiger, he joined the frantic efforts to stop the attack. His voice, usually so authoritative and confident, trembled with desperation as he pleaded with Manticore, begging him to let go. But the tiger did not respond to the familiar voices or commands. A final strong blow with the base of the fire extinguisher to Manticore's head shocked the animal. Finally, he released Roy. Assistants rushed forward, carrying Roy's limp body off the stage. The audience, still frozen in stunned silence, watched as the charismatic showman was carried away. He was not moving. Backstage medics desperately fought for his life. Roy's injuries were catastrophic: a crushed trachea, severe blood loss, and damaged vertebrae. His body was failing. Every second counted. He was urgently taken to the University Medical Center. The world held its breath, waiting for news. His heart stopped several times on the operating table, and surgeons had to remove part of his skull to reduce the pressure on his swelling brain. Against all odds, Roy survived. However, survival came at a cost. The man who once commanded the stage with power and grace was left permanently impaired. The attack deprived him of a significant portion of his motor functions and severely affected his ability to speak. The vibrant, commanding personality that made Siegfried and Roy a household name was forever changed. With Roy's injuries ending his career, their iconic show was immediately cancelled. After 13 years at the Mirage and approximately 5,000 performances, Siegfried and Roy's time in the spotlight came to a sudden, tragic end. But even in the face of disaster, the bond between Siegfried and Roy remained unshakable. Siegfried never left Roy's side, dedicating himself to caring for his partner. Manticore was returned under the personal care of the duo. There was no public punishment, no forced transfer. Roy insisted that Manticore attacked not out of malice, but rather in an attempt to protect him. Whether this was true or a softened version to protect the legacy of their show remains a matter of debate. Despite everything, Siegfried and Roy had one last performance left. 6 years later, they would take the stage for the final time. For Alexander Crispin Suarez, mastery over tigers was more than just a skill. It was an art, a dance between man and beast that had captivated audiences for years. He commanded the arena with confidence. His presence towered over the creatures he had trained all his life. But on one fateful night in Ocozocoautla, Mexico, the illusion of control shattered, leaving behind a scene of chaos that none of the spectators would ever forget. The date was February 2nd, 2013. The Suarez Brothers Circus had arrived in town, bringing with it the promise of wonder, excitement, and breathtaking performances. Families gathered under the big circus tent, their children's eyes shining with anticipation for the show. At the center of it all was Alexander, an experienced animal trainer with a reputation built on his work with Bengal tigers. His entire life had been shaped by the circus, with traditions passed down through generations of performers. The roar of the crowd, the thrill of the spectacle, it was all he had ever known. The tigers, with their bright orange coats and piercing eyes, were both his greatest passion and his greatest challenge. For years he studied their behavior, learning to predict their every move. He understood their strength, their instincts, their temperament. Or so he thought. That evening, Alexander stepped into the arena with his 2 Bengal tigers. The audience erupted in applause as the performance began. The massive animals moved with calculated grace, each step following the rhythm of the act. The bond between man and beast was on full display, a testament to years of training and trust between them. But trust is a fragile thing, and in the world of wild animals, control is always just an illusion. This moment lasted only a few seconds, but for those watching it stretched into eternity. One of the Bengal tigers, a beast weighing over 450 pounds, lunged forward without hesitation. The audience barely had time to react before Alexander was on the ground, pinned by the primal, relentless force of nature itself. Gasps of astonishment turned into piercing screams. Parents clutched their children, unsure if this was part of the act or something far more sinister. But when Alexander thrashed beneath the beast, when blood began to stain the sawdust-covered floor of the arena, it became clear this was no illusion. The tiger's jaws clamped down on his leg, and the predator dragged him across the ring like helpless prey. Alexander tried to resist, but against an animal of such power, he had little chance. Years of training, the bond he believed in, all shattered in one brutal moment. The second tiger remained motionless, its piercing eyes watching the unfolding chaos, as if deciding whether to intervene or stay still. The audience, frozen in horror, watched as the circus staff rushed into the arena. Desperation was evident in their every movement. They wielded metal rods, striking the tiger in a frantic attempt to make it release its grip. The blows landed with a dull, sickening thud, but the beast did not let go. It seemed for the first time in its life it remembered what it truly was, a predator, no longer bound by routine training or the fragile illusion of control. The crowd erupted in terror. Some rushed to the exits, their minds unable to cope with the nightmare unfolding before them. Others stood frozen, paralyzed, their eyes fixed on the nightmare under the spotlight. Then the tiger's jaws found Alexander's neck. The circus, once filled with laughter and wonder, plunged into a deadly silence. When the tiger finally released Alexander, it was already too late. His body lay limp on the sawdust of the arena, motionless under the harsh stage lights. The atmosphere of awe and excitement that reigned in the Suarez brothers circus turned into chaos. Screaming spectators ran towards the exits. The sounds of their terror echoed under the tent. The voice of the ringmaster boomed from the speakers, desperately trying to maintain order, but it was impossible to contain the panic. The circus staff acted quickly, herding the tiger back into its cage. Its massive figure disappeared behind the steel bars. But the damage was already done. The performance and Alexander's life came to a tragic and bloody end. He was urgently taken to the local hospital. The ambulance sped through the dimly lit streets of Ochoa, but the battle was already lost. The wounds were too deep, the blood loss too severe. A few hours later, the man who had dedicated his life to taming tigers passed away. The news of the attack spread like wildfire. The Suarez Brothers Circus, once a beloved entertainment, now found itself at the center of a storm. Investigations were launched. Authorities demanded answers. The circus's permits were in order. The tigers were kept legally and the performances were approved by officials. But that meant little in quelling the growing scandal. Animal rights groups seized the moment, reigniting debates about the ethics of performances involving live animals. Was this tragedy an inevitable accident or a natural consequence of forcing wild creatures into unnatural roles? For years, Alexander believed in the bond between man and beast. That night, under the bright lights of the big top, that belief was shattered to pieces. The circus continued on its path. The show, as they say, must go on. But for those who witnessed that horror, the magic was gone. The great illusion, the one that assured the audience of their complete safety, vanished forever. Not only professional trainers who have dedicated years to studying and working with predators find themselves on the brink of disaster. Sometimes tragedy occurs due to those on the other side of the fence. Ordinary visitors, tourists, thrill seekers, in pursuit of a unique shot, an adrenaline rush, or simply due to fatal carelessness. People commit acts that seem unthinkable. They ignore bright, glaring warning signs. They easily overcome barriers and fences that are put in place specifically for their protection. They believe that a single photo next to a formidable predator or a fleeting touch of the wild justifies any risk. They forget that behind the apparent calmness of the animal lies a millennia-old instinct that can awaken in an instant from a sudden movement, an unfamiliar scent, or simply an invasion of personal space. These stories are a bitter reminder that film zoos and safari parks are not playgrounds. These are places where we can observe wildlife, but we must always remember to maintain distance and show respect. When a person deliberately breaks the rules, they endanger not only their own life, but also the fate of the animal, which, acting instinctively, may be doomed to death after the incident. Next, I will tell you about several such cases where human recklessness led to horrifying consequences, serving as a lesson paid for with blood and suffering. On April 10, 2009, the Berlin Zoo, known for its rich species diversity, became the scene of a chilling incident. A 32-year-old woman decided that simply observing the polar bears was not enough for her. She desired a personal, close encounter with these Arctic giants, some of the largest and most dangerous land predators on the planet. Ignoring numerous warning signs and impressive protective structures, she displayed a remarkable but utterly reckless determination. She climbed over the fence, pushed through the thorny hedge, and scaled a wall nearly 10 feet high to reach the polar bear enclosure. And all of this during feeding time, when the animals are most alert and, let's be honest, most hungry. Predators whose weight can reach up to 1,500 pounds and whose height on their hind legs can exceed 10 feet. When she jumped into the moat separating the enclosure from the public, the bears immediately took notice of her. One of them approached. The look in its eyes was curious but by no means friendly. Within a few seconds, curiosity turned into hunting excitement. The bear lunged at the woman, sinking its powerful jaws into her back and arms. Panicking spectators watched the scene in horror. Some were recording the nightmare on their cameras. The zoo staff reacted instantly. They threw life rings and extended ladders, trying to distract the predator's attention. Some even used long sticks to fend it off. After several tense minutes that seemed like an eternity, they managed to pull the victim to safety. She sustained serious lacerations and bites, but miraculously survived. Later, experts concluded a few more moments in the enclosure and the outcome would have been fatal. This incident became a shocking example of what complete disregard for safety rules and common sense can lead to. The pursuit of the perfect shot for social media sometimes drives people to utterly reckless actions. In 2019, one woman's quest for virtual recognition nearly cost her dearly, turning a zoo visit into a lesson written in her own blood. During a visit to the Wildlife World Zoo in Arizona, her attention was drawn to a black jaguar resting at the very edge of its enclosure. She saw this as the perfect opportunity for a photo that would undoubtedly gather many likes. Completely ignoring the clear warning signs and a barrier about 3 feet high, specifically set up to keep visitors at a safe distance, she climbed over the fence. She got unacceptably close, turning her back to the enclosure to take the coveted selfie. For the jaguar, this intrusion into its territory might have seemed either a threat or an invitation to dinner. The reaction was immediate. In a split second, the predator's powerful paw darted through the metal mesh of the fence. Razor-sharp claws sank into the woman's arm. Her screams of terror echoed throughout the zoo, attracting the attention of other visitors. Fortunately, there were people nearby who did not lose their composure in the critical situation. One man showed incredible self-control. He quickly pushed a water bottle through the fence, trying to distract the jaguar. This maneuver worked. The predator released its grip. The victim was immediately dragged to a safe place. Her arm was covered with deep lacerations that required stitches, but fortunately the injuries were not life-threatening. Later, the woman returned to the zoo to apologize, fully admitting her fault and recklessness. The zoo management confirmed that the jaguar would not be euthanized, rightly emphasizing that the animal acted instinctively and was not at fault for the incident. This incident is a stark reminder. No photograph, no number of likes justifies risking your own life and the well-being of the animal. Respect boundaries. They exist for your protection. Sometimes a momentary lapse in caution, neglecting obvious safety rules, can lead to an irreversible tragedy, especially when it comes to encountering wildlife face-to-face. The story of Catherine Chappell, a 29-year-old American tourist, became such a terrifying lesson on June 1, 2015. Catherine, a talented visual effects specialist who worked on well-known projects such as the Captain America films and the series Game of Thrones, and who was also actively involved in wildlife conservation, was visiting a lion park near Johannesburg in South Africa. During the safari, while moving through the park in a vehicle where lions roam freely, she made a fatal mistake. Contrary to the strictest rules prohibiting opening windows in the vehicle, Catherine decided to lower the window to take better photographs of the lion pride resting nearby. She probably thought she was at a safe distance or that the animals wouldn't pay attention to her. This assumption proved to be fatal. The moment the window was lowered, one of the lionesses near the car reacted instantly. A powerful paw reached through the open window and the predator grabbed Catherine. Other tourists in nearby cars saw what was happening and honked desperately, trying to scare the animal away. But everything happened too quickly. The attack was so sudden and fierce that it was impossible to help Catherine. The injuries were incompatible with life. She died on the spot before the ambulance arrived. Her death was not only a personal tragedy but also a great loss for the conservationist community, and yet another grim reminder that wild animals remain wild and safety rules in their presence are written in blood. The danger in the world of big cats and other mighty predators lurks not only for reckless visitors crossing forbidden lines. Sometimes the victims are those who have dedicated their lives to caring for these animals, who know their habits, who enter their enclosures daily: keepers, trainers, park owners, people whose work demands maximum concentration, knowledge of safety protocols, and constant respect for the wild power they deal with. But a human is not a machine. Fatigue, routine, a momentary distraction, or a false sense of security born from years of incident-free work alongside a predator can lead to a fatal mistake. One unlocked latch, one wrong move, one breach of protocol that seemed insignificant. And then the years-long bond, built on trust and understanding, collapses under the pressure of primal instinct. When a professional confident in their knowledge and experience finds themselves face-to-face with an enraged animal due to their own mistake, it is a tragedy of a special kind. It is a reminder that even the deepest understanding of an animal does not negate its wild nature. This story is about how the human factor, a simple mistake, inattention, a momentary weakness, can turn a familiar work environment into an arena of a deadly struggle.